All right. First off, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Mount Stone. And salutations to the Akim they're pushing this word sincerely in our truth. To believers, to sisters, pretty much the rest of the 1/3, men, women, and children who make up that remnant, that's going to return to Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai through the mercy that is in his Son. You know, the topic of this lesson is evident, as you see here on screen. This is an article from Politico that was posted March 22, 2022, the year of the Lord turning up. And the title of the article is Get Ready for Hell. UN Food Chief warns amid Ukraine shockwaves. And this situation that's ongoing in the Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine, which is engineered, through the spirit, that this thing is engineered first and foremost at the highest level by the Heavenly Father and the angels, but on a lower level, on a carnal level, this thing is engineered by the elites of this world. There's nothing that is that is coincidental that's happening right now. These moves are very calculated, and they are very, very deliberate, and have been planned for decades even, But what is happening is that the world's food supply, is getting fucked pretty much, for lack of a better term, The Ukraine is one of the world's largest exporter of grain and wheat. So is Russia, and Russia also is a big exporter of one of the key ingredients used to make fertilizers worldwide. So this is causing some serious food shortages in the earth, And one of the things that the scriptures warn you about, or warn about, is major famines, in the last days. I mean, famines are something that happen throughout history, many times, and each time it happens, it's a very, very graphic and destructive time, devastating time, right? But because we're so comfortable right now, we can go to the supermarket. I myself just went to the supermarket to get a couple of supplies. It's so easy to get the things that you need now that you think yourself to be in good case. But I thought, let me just read that quickly before we get into the article. This is 2 Ezra chapter 16, verse 21. Behold, victuals shall be so good cheap upon earth that they shall think themselves to be in good case. And even then shall evils grow upon the earth, sword, famine, and great destruction. So right now, the place is open back up. They're especially, here in Jamaica, there are no more COVID restrictions, there are no more lockdowns, there are no more curfews, the mask mandates are out, are pretty much gone for out in the public. We just have to wear it now when we're going to like stores and pharmacies and supermarkets until April 15, but parties, are now allowed, so every weekend there's many parties going on. So people are comfortable right now. The only thing that's really worrying them is the shooting gas price. But for all intents and purposes, people are good. You can still afford to go to the supermarket. It's getting tighter, but you can still afford to go to the supermarket. You can still afford to eat, but the poorer are feeling the squeeze, right? Let me just get into the article, and then we can hit some scriptures and wrap it up. All right, so it says, get ready for hell. UN food chief warns amid Ukraine shockwaves. World Food Program flags famine risks in Africa and the Middle East as Ukraine war hits supplies. The head of the world's biggest food aid agency has a stark warning for European leaders. Pay more now to stave off global hunger or suffer a mitigation crisis later. Russia's war in Ukraine has sent a shockwave through the international food markets, worsening the already dire problem of food hunger by disrupting supply and inflating prices. That risks tipping the poorest, most famine-ravaged regions of the planet into political chaos and creating an unprecedented migration crisis, according to David Beasley, the World Food Programme's executive director. In an interview with Politico, Beasley warned that Europe must donate more funding urgently or it will bear the brunt of the fallout. We're billions short, he said. Fail to provide this year a few extra $1 billion means you're going to have famine, destabilization, and mass migration. You have a saying by this political commentator Gerald Celente. Yeah, one day the poor will have nothing to eat but the rich. And best believe if the Middle Eastern, as the article point out, or just did point out, if the Middle East and the so-called Africans are starving, they're not gonna stay there and starve you. They're gonna migrate to Europe first and foremost because that's their closest option, right? So one day the poor will have nothing to eat but the rich. Says Beasley's intervention will sharpen minds as EU governments draw up plans to address the food crisis resulting from the war. And they have their own crisis right now because they have an energy crisis because Russia has just declared that they will only accept payment in rubles. So they have their own plates full. The price of energy in Europe is ridiculous right now, right? Russia and Ukraine are among the world's largest producers and exporters of grain. The disruption caused by the war has a direct impact on countries that rely on these supplies in the Middle East and Africa. Half of Africa's wheat imports come from Ukraine and Russia, which is also a major fertilizer exporter. As for Ukraine, its exports have grown to a halt, and its capacity to keep growing food this year has been hanging by a thread. Right? It says the crunch point will come in the fall, Beasley said, when the full impact of the war's disruption is to be felt. Yeah, because now is growing season, yo. So when the growing season has passed, right, and enough crops weren't seeded, there will be nothing to harvest. And if there's nothing to harvest, then hey, he said, if you think we've got hell on earth, no, you just get ready. Let me read it again. If you think we've got hell on earth, no, you just get ready, Beasley warned. If we neglect Northern Africa is coming to Europe. If we neglect the Middle East is coming to Europe. The economic conditions facing these parts of the world are no worse than they were in the run-up to the Arab Spring, which was a major political and social unrest that ignited all the Arab nations, and there was just mass protests, civil unrest, civil war. And this is worse, right? And it's not just the populations of the Middle East and North African countries who will feel the squeeze. The WPF is already feeding millions of people further south in the Sahel countries like Niger and Burkina Faso, or however it's pronounced, where problems will worsen if global prices stay sky high. I've been warning our developed nation for several years now that the Sahel is going to collapse if we're not careful, right? It says Beasley is on an urgent fundraising mission, right, to Brussels, where he held talks with two EU commissioners on Tuesday. If the food crisis spins out of control and the world faces critical supply shortages, the rich West will not be spared from political unrest, right? What do you think is going to happen in Paris and Chicago and Brussels when there's not enough food? So he's saying that, hey, this is happening now in the poorer countries, and you're ignoring it. If you ignore this problem happening in the poorer countries that are now in famine pretty much, and are going to be in even worse famine if there's no intervention, what do you think is going to happen when the same food shortages start to hit you richer people, right? And this is what's coming according to the scriptures, right? What do you think is going to happen when in Paris and Chicago and Brussels and Jamaica for that matter, when there's not enough food anywhere in the world? He said, speaking in the sumptuous surroundings of Belgium's Royal Fine Arts Museum, where the EU held a major humanitarian conference this week. It's easy to sit on your high horse in your ivory tower when you're not the one starving. And you will soon be, because this is going to be global, right? This is going to be global. And I'm going to put the article in the description box so birds can read it. Let's just get a few precepts. This is Jeremiah chapter 19, verse 9. And I will cause them to eat the flesh of their sons and the flesh of their daughters, and they shall eat every one the flesh of his friend in the seas and straightness, wherein their enemies and they that seek their life shall straighten them. This happened in famine, This happened Matter of fact, we're gonna read an example. Let's read an example of when this happened in our history, yo, as a people, right? In Samaria. This is 2 Kings 6, verse 25. And there was a great famine in Samaria, and behold, they besieged it. Who besieged it? Right, the king Shalmaneser, right? They besieged Samaria, yo. They besieged the northern kingdom, right? In I believe in the 700s BC, you know. He said, and behold, they besieged it until an ass's head was sold for 80 pieces of silver, and the fourth part of a cab of dove's dung for 5 pieces of silver. Dove shit and an ass's head were sold for silver, right? He said, and as the king of Israel was passing by upon the wall, there cried a woman unto him, saying, help me, help my lord, O king. And he said, if the Lord do not help thee, when shall I help thee? Right? So he's saying, brother, my girl, I can't help you. Out of the barn floor, or out of the winepress. And the king said unto her, what aileth thee? And she answered, this woman said unto me, give thy son, that we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow. Let me read it again. And she answered, this woman said to me, give thy son, that we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow. So we boiled my son, and did eat him. We boiled my son and did eat him. A lot of people don't know that these things are written of in the scriptures, yo. Right? And I said unto her on the next day, give thy son that we may eat him. And she hath hid her son. And it came to pass when the king heard the words of the woman that he rent his clothes, and he passed by upon the wall, and the people looked, and behold, he had sackcloth within upon his flesh. Then said he, God do so and more also to me, if the head of Elijah the son of Shaphat shall stand on him this day. But the point is made. These two women had an agreement to eat each other's son. One son got eaten, and the other woman hid her son the next day. But that's how the famine was great, yo. And if you read here in Lamentation 4 and 9, it talks about the same thing. They that be slain with the sword are better than they that be slain with hunger. Why? Because you're only slain with the sword, it's a quick death and often painless. Right? It says, but for these pine away, stricken through for want of the fruit of the fields. Hey, when you starve, when you die of starvation, your body literally feeds on itself until you lose your mind and just die, yo. Right? 20% of the glucose in your body is consumed by your brain. Right? And your brain will feed on your body until there's nothing left and you just die. When the fat reserves go, when the glucose reserves go, then it turns to the fat reserves. When the fat reserves go, then it turns to the protein in your muscles. Right? When the protein starts to go, then it starts to actually break down your bones to get food until you finally just degrade away and die, yo. And that's a painful death, excruciating death, yo. That's why the scripture said, they that be slain with sword are better than they that be slain with hunger. Right? And reading on to verse 10, it says, the hands of the pitiful women have sodden their own children. Sodden means to cook, to boil, just like we read in 2 Kings chapter 6. For these pine away, Salakia, have sodden their own children. They were their meat in the destruction of the daughter of my people. So all of you single mothers, right, that are proud as hell on social media, right? I'm a single lady. Yeah, all of you, who are proud as hell. The time gonna come when a lot of you gonna eat your kids, yo. A lot of you are gonna eat your kids. That's just the reality, right? That's just the reality. Let's get 2 Ezra chapter 6, verse 22. And suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown, and the full storehouses shall be found empty. And the trumpet shall give a sound, which when every man heareth, they shall be suddenly afraid. And at that time, friends shall fight against another like enemy. Why? Because you're hungry. You don't care about what friends you have. Matter of fact, if you're going to eat your son, can you imagine what you will do to your friend? Let alone those you consider your enemies? right? And the earth shall stand in fear with those things that are therein. The springs of the fountain shall stand still, and in 3 hours they shall not run. Let me get also Second Ezra chapter 15, right? And I'll read verse 19. A man shall have no pity on his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with a sword, and spoil their goods for lack of bread and for great tribulation. This is what's coming, yo. This is what's coming. Slowly but surely, right? Slowly but surely. When this Third World War, which is the third war written off in Revelation, when that really kicks off, if a small war between two countries is causing this much global hunger crisis, can you imagine if the whole Europe or the whole world is engulfed in a war? Right? There will be food supply shortages greater than has ever been witnessed, as a nation, as a people, yo. Right? And that's what's coming. Right? So until next time, shalom.